Unitarian Universalist West Side Service in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. My name is Michelle Pugliani, and I am the Secretary of the Board, and I'd like to welcome you to today's service. That was a song called Shakin' a Pocky by Natalie McMaster. Today's welcome. As we enter into the service, put away the pressures of the world that ask us to perform, to make up masks, to put on brave fronts. Silence the voice that asks you to be perfect. This is a community of compassion and welcoming. You do not have to do anything to earn the love contained within these walls. You do not have to be braver, smarter, stronger, better than you are in this moment to belong here with us. You only have to bring the gift of your body, no matter how able, your seeking mind, no matter how busy, your animal heart, no matter how broken. Bring all that you are and all that you love to this hour together. Let us worship together. We start today off by honoring the land. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the territory of the indigenous tribes. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. At this time, do we have any announcements? Yes, ma'am.
Tonight, Moon Spirit Cups is having a full moon ritual. We'll start with a potluck at 6:30, and the ritual will be around 7:30. And anyone who wants to can stay for the lunar eclipse tonight, which starts around 9, and it's going to be a beautiful red moon.
Fantastic. I'm so glad you shared the time with us. So the moon cups start at 6:30. Bring a potluck if you want to, or just come as you are.
And it's also the flower moon. So if you bring anything to do with flowers or red foods, because it's going to be a red moon.
That's awesome. So flower moon tonight, red things to eat and wear and share. And at 9 o'clock-ish, the eclipse is going to start. So
Yeah.
even if you're not here, you can still be wherever you are and look out.
East.
Look east, my friends, look east. Are there any other announcements?
Also, the drum circle is this Friday at 6:30.
Fantastic. The drum circle is on Friday at 6:30. There we go. Anything else? Labyrinth Day Walk was very successful. We had 13 new people that came to walk our labyrinths. Thank you for everyone that came out and shared our labyrinth with us, and I hope you can share it any time of day. It's always open to you. Today we have the potluck, and after the service, it is a town hall meeting, and there's lots of things that we're going to be doing. If you are on Zoom right now, we have a Zoom link that went out to all of our members and friends. At this time, we're going to light our chalice. How delicate the world is, O sisters and brothers, precious beyond measure. How delicate the world is, how beautiful a golden sunrise through the smoke of distant fires. And that was by Jackie Olson. At this time, if you could please stand, if you are willing and able. We're going to share our aspirations. Life is a gift. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation, thus doing covenant with one another. Please be seated.
I'll light one more candle in honor of the fact that this land was much native land. We thank those Native peoples for their strength and resilience and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. So our moment for all ages is from one of my favorite books. It's called God Went to Beauty School. And it's amusing. On one level, it's completely kind of funny, but on the other level, it's very touching to me to think about the creator of all being curious about who we are and where that might lead such a being to be engaging with us. And this time he got in a boat and said, wow. He'd never actually floated in a boat, though he'd seen people out on the water and told himself he'd have to try it someday. Water had always bored him until he started seeing people having fun on it. So one day he got in a boat and said, wow, again, and headed out across the lake, and the whole world looked different. He couldn't get over it. It didn't look anything like it looked from the sky or from the ground or even from inside a whale, which he'd tried a couple of times. He sat in the boat and was surprised how much sense it all made. All the little houses and all the green trees and all the tidy cities and all the sky and all the land, it just made sense. He was surprised because really, he'd just been winging it.
Do you want to do the moment for centering?
Okay. So just find a comfortable position. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And for about 30 seconds or so, we will arrive fully in this place with one another. Blessed be.
Now is the time that we share our joys and concerns. A joy shared is a joy doubled. A concern shared is a sorrow shared is a sorrow halved. And Julia, you're going to light the candles, and I'm going to take the mic around.
Well, I have a couple of each, joys and concerns. One concern is this mic. I don't know how far away to hold it. Okay, so one of my joys is that my garden is beautiful. And all the roses are blooming, and the iris, and the daisies. And the grass is green, and the sky is blue. And my concern is, I can see the plume. Yeah. The gigantic plume of smoke to the north. And I mourn for what's happening, not just here, but specifically here in New Mexico. My other concern is about the 1 million souls now that more or less, probably much more, but have departed due to COVID. And the fact that I'm personally hearing of or acquainted with people who are getting it now, in spite of being vaccinated and boosted at least once. And I think that it's time to be aware that this is not over. My other joy is that Kira is graduating. from Sandia Prep, and she's going to, I think I said this last time I was here, to the University of Arts in Boston. So we're going to be attending her graduation things this next couple of weeks.
So I have a couple of joys, one of which my husband Gary, who's been trying to recover from 2 heart attacks over the last year. The doctor the other day took him off the blood thinners and he immediately improved drastically. Wow. So he was feeling so much better, he actually went up on the roof and hooked up our air conditioner without getting too tired or dizzy or anything. I guess he's fine. The other good news is my cat Hoshi, who was doing very poorly just a few weeks ago, is suddenly a whole lot better. And she's going to make it to her 14th birthday, which is May 31st. I'm also concerned about the whole COVID thing and the fact that it's not even close to over, even though Gary and I have now had our 4th shot. I'm getting on an airplane next month, and the mask mandates have been taken away, and I'm really concerned.
I have a joy in that I'm going to be able to get my hearing aids. Hi. I guess I'll say my concern first. It's for the world going to hell in a handbasket. And I'm particularly concerned about our nation, as I have been since 2015, when I kept hearing Hitler-like things. And more, I'm reminded of what led to Nazi Germany. And I'm hoping and working hard to see that the vote in November will enable that not to happen, because it's terrible if we have a fascist state. That's number one. But I have a great joy, and I think I've told you all how much I love my granddaughter, who's 28. She's not an old lady, but a young lady. And I think I told some of you that the city of Albuquerque awarded her a $2,500 grant to paint a mural. And she has 18 months to do that. So she'll finish her coursework for the year. She's in a master's degree program in social work. Okay, and then she'll get to work on that. But Friday night, when we celebrated Mother's Day, because we were all too busy to celebrate it before, we learned that she had a gig that evening to paint the pictures of people at an event. And she's getting known as an artist around town, and that's wonderful.
What's her name?
Pamina, no, that's my daughter's name, I'm sorry. Melina Baron Deutsch. And she also works as a social worker. You probably know the name, it's Mountain something, further upstate, that does programs for LGBTQ people, which she is one.
Thank you.
My concern is that Roe versus Wade will be overturned, and also I hope that Finland and Sweden join NATO.
know that all of these things that we've been talking about are extremely serious and they are very concerning. I have a joy because I've been tutoring 2 children online for the last year. And yesterday, or Friday, I went to their school to see them because it was going to be our last day together and I wanted to meet them in person and I had some books to share with them. And seeing the kids in the school, I mean, it's an amazing school, walking down the aisles, looking at all the work and the joyous colors and the kids smiling and waving, and, you know, it just gives you hope. You know, these kids were just so bright and so great, and, you know, go to a school, see some kids, it will lift your spirits.
Well, here's one right here.
Yeah. Wow, as soon as I saw her, it lifted my spirits.
Two things. One, it was 50 years ago tonight at 10 o'clock that I learned where religion came from. I walked out of a meeting that was planning to block an eviction the next day. That was a group I worked with, blocking evictions. And I looked up at the sky and I suddenly said, I don't know what we did this time, but it's all over. And I mean, it's all over. The moon was red, okay? And I didn't know, I came out right at the peak of the full eclipse and didn't know what was happening. And it took about a minute and a half until I put together in my head what was actually going on. And in that minute and a half, I understood how people sacrificed their virgin daughters or whatever the hell it took to change what was going on when something so entirely incomprehensible, which it would have been until a couple hundred years ago, occurred. The other thing is, Julia's sermon today is much about war, Second World War, and there's lots of talk, of course, about the role of women in the military. But what most people don't realize is women have been in the military for a long time. I had 2 aunts who served in World War II. One was Patton's chief aide, and at the other end was my Aunt Henny, and my Aunt Esther came back with what would now be called PTSD. She worked on a morgue ship, and she never could really function after she came back. And my Aunt Henny, who was Patton's aide, brought back a number of things with her, including this bayonet, which is why I brought it today to symbolize her service in the military. So women in the military is not new. And in my parents' generation, in the 40s, in World War II, women were serving and sacrificing.
We need to be sure and mention with deep sorrow the latest mass shooting. At least 10 people, last I heard, were shot and killed just because of the color of their skin.
I lived in Las Vegas, New Mexico for a while, and it just makes me so upset with all those people losing so much. And I had a friend, or I still have her, but I thought she was going to be coming down to stay with us because she wouldn't leave her house in Las Vegas. So needless to say, I have the cleanest extra bedroom ever. But I just want to say my real joy, because we lived in Vegas, and then we moved to the Central Coast of California for 10 years, and then we came back to New Mexico. I can't tell you how happy and how wonderful it is living here. This is absolutely the best ever. So,
Here.
I love it here.
And we love you.
Well, I love you too.
Steve and I have a joy, Sarah Jane, our middle daughter. She's 24. She graduated yesterday with a master's degree in math, and then she's still in a doctorate program, so she'll be with us for 3 more years.
You know, I lived here for fewer than 5 years, and I love it. But I don't think it's the best place. I think that to have such a low education rate, a low income rate, a high killing rate is terrible. And drunken driving. I come from Massachusetts, and after being in Michigan and New Jersey and New York, but I was in Massachusetts for 50 years, and we're much more civilized in Massachusetts. And one of the things I want to say, in Massachusetts, and I think in all the other states, we have paid full-time legislators. Here, our legislators don't even have offices. They don't have aides. It's terrible. We need to do something about that.
Well, for the sharing of joys and concern, I also have another joy. My first year teaching here was in 4th grade, and I went last night and saw one of my first students graduate from high school. We light this red candle for all the racial violence that is still going on, and we remember that we have to take a stand to do things about the things we want to change. At this time, I'd like to introduce Rev Julia with The Dollmaker.
We want to do the offering?
Oh, yes, I would love to do a gift of offering. At this time, we're going to do a gift of offering. If you could play some music, we'll pass the basket. There's other ways to pledge. If you'd like to do a pledge, you can go directly to our donation site. Please make sure your name is on it. If you do a pledge, make sure your name is on it so we can make sure you get the credit for it. All right, we're going to sing it.
I guess I have to dance.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Thank you.
You know something. That's the quote from one of my professors in seminary, Reverend Ron Cook, and he held us to account for knowing something. And he added, I know something. Quote, my life and my unique experiences are valuable and worthwhile. I do know something about life and living, something important, something of value. My qualifications to do this work and where I went to school or not where I went to school or the clubs or my bank account, they're based on how I live, how I felt and how I struggled to create a life of meaning and connection. So, if Dr. Ron Cook told me that, I must know something too. And I'm pretty sure I learned a few important things when I was in seminary. I had a particularly wonderful professor in that school, Starking School for the Ministry, Dr. Claire Fisher. She knew a lot about a lot of different things, and she was probably the most intellectual of all my seminary teachers, except perhaps the Dominican nun who taught me about the Bible, Sister Barbara Green. And she was funny and inspiring and a great scholar with this terrific sense of humor. You need a sense of humor, I think, to guide a bunch of UUs through the Bible. But I especially appreciated Sister Rosemary Chinichi, who taught pastoral care. Just being in her orbit mattered as much as anything I learned in all of school. And being able to mention each of these Each of these teachers is one more way that I can honor them. You may not have known that a UU seminary was so rich with studies across denominations. I loved being in Berkeley and swimming in such an exhilarating, swirling sea of different traditions. Back at the UU Seminary, Starr King School for the Ministry, every year, Dr. Claire Fisher assigned a novel for discussion. My class read a very short work called Deep River by Shoshaku Endo. I'm sure I butchered that. It was about a busload of Japanese travelers, each one of whom has a tragic flaw as they make this pilgrimage journey to the Indus River. It was a good discussion starting place. But the next class was given The Dollmaker by Harriet Arnow, and they were absolutely haunted by it. So finally, 25 years passed, and last year I got around to reading it. Briefly, Gertie is the young mother of 5 children. She's married to a man we never know deeply because he is already away in Chicago working in a steel foundry. Steel is needed for the war effort. Gertie is wise, if uneducated, and determined and strong, and her ambitious vision is to own some property in the hills. She deeply loves her family and the woods and the cabin and the mule that form the bedrock of her life. Descriptions of this land and the forest and her own preparation for buying an adjacent log cabin, well, it was a visit to paradise. But this is a story of paradise lost. Whenever the daily work of all that her family required is mostly accomplished, Gertie whittles. She's more than a whittler, she's an artist and really a creator of extraordinary hand-carved dolls. Well, it's World War II, and everyone is sacrificing, and everyone is worried and watching out for the mail carrier who only arrives now and then in the village and always bringing dreadful news. Her husband has already gone north, and he calls for Gertie and the children to join him and to move to industrial Detroit with its terrible overcrowding, company-owned, very small prefab houses inhabited by very large families, appliances bought on credit, smoke, incessant noise, winter ice, trains constantly running to and fro screaming, coal in and steel out. The noise itself, along with the crowding, make this a hellish place. The families are from all over, and many are from Europe and don't even speak English, and they have different foods. Most are Catholic, and Gertie and her family are not, so there are just all these barriers to having a social connection. There's no possibility that she could have stayed in the wild beauty and deep familiarity of home. She has to adapt into this overcrowding, the constant chafing of people from all over, and continual industrial noise. She's no longer immersed in the sounds of birds and the winds in the trees, but rather the screams of alarms as molten metal is poured and the piercing cries of supply trains going in and out and yelling about her for all reasons. I felt anxious just reading about it. Gertie never considers any other choice than staying in this crowded factory housing with her husband and all of their children. She never tells her husband of her own dreams and her plans to make a better life in the woods, of her nearly buying the adjacent farm with money she had already saved from selling her dolls. She never shares her feelings with anyone at all. That a woman might have such dreams, to have her own visions, is not considered, and she is certainly not asked. I doubt I have it in me to be such a faithful servant, even if I were earnestly trying to serve my family and an important cause. Could I be selfless in that way? My answer, quite frankly, is probably not. At least not without a whole lot of whining and complaining and trying to find ways to escape. At the very least, not telling everybody all the time how much I was suffering and what I was sacrificing. I'd be constantly looking at my life and trying to find an escape hatch. You know, it's just not always a positive thing to be so constantly reflective of your own life. Gertie, however, does try to make it better, though she's never trying to break free. I just wondered if any of us could simply live our commitments without analyzing and strategizing and, complaining. Is it not what we consider to be normal for the middle class, at least? Aware of choices and critiquing where we are and hoping for things to get better? By comparison, Gertie inhabited a different ethical universe. Her moral compass was clear, and she was faithful to the life she was brought up to honor. One of which was the principle that women needed to know their place. Whereas our lives are much more complicated morally and very confusing, I find. We have fewer behavioral rules, and we are trained to analyze. With multiple priorities yanking us in different directions, we're likely to speak out. And many times, that's exactly the right thing to do. Sometimes I wish I had more courage for such speaking out. Freedom is a complicated gift. Every choice we make is entwined with moral conflict. At least that's the life I live in, this complicated moral mess. Now, at this stage in my life, I don't think my personal choices affect many people, most of them Fanny, my husband, and to a lesser degree my adult daughters, with a ripple effect outward. Maybe most seriously, I think I affect the environment. My own biggest complicated environmental decision is the weight of flying across country a couple of times a year. I know it's a big negative, and I desperately do not want to stop because that's where I see my family. Now, if you have a better idea or disagree with my values and feel I keep making terrible blunders, you are welcome to tell me. That's why we have what we call talkback in Unitarian Universalisms. You are invited to call me to account. We're not bound by absolute necessity, and an important reason to participate in a community like this is to get feedback, which I always hope will be positive, but I'm also open to things that will encourage me to lead a more just and compassionate life. I don't want my life without my family as a priority. The Dollmaker revolves around Gertie and her care for her family. And strangely, as I read this novel with all of my personal privilege and relative ease, frankly, my spoiledness, I responded deeply to Gertie. Life must have been soul-killing for her husband in the military service too, but we mostly see him through how hard he works, how demanding the factory bosses are, and how tired he is, and all the while inside the roar of machinery and the fire of the foundry. We never know him personally, but sense that supporting his family and contributing to the war effort is everything. We're not given the information about his interior life, and actually, we're not told much about Gertie's interior conflicts either. More, we see that she does what must be done. She does the next right thing. She does the next thing in her path. We too would probably want to make it easier for each of our children who are used to working hard on the farm, and we each would probably appreciate the natural beauty and abundance of the wildlife that used to surround them. But I'm reflecting again on the complexity of our lives, where we have so many choices. And if we are awake, we inevitably carry the burden of those choices. Few of us have had a life as physically demanding as those mountain farmers or those tenement dwellers working such long shifts on the factory. which was coal-fired, and that in itself is hellish. So what conflicts were brought to my mind as I read? What were the demands of my life, and where are my responsibilities? Somewhere in those questions, my moral balance is the focus. With all that I have, what is my responsibility to my family, to the earth, to all of you, to all of Earth's people? I guess I'm wrestling with the questions that every one of us face if we're alert, if we're awake. And at this stage of life, for me, with this energy and this current capacity, which is diminished, what should I be doing? What would make my living good? Do I get stuck pursuing my own pleasures, or do I care about living a good life, as in contributing to my community and protecting the earth? These questions are always with me, even as my age narrows my path. I've always been burdened by questions of learning and meaning and a sense of responsibility. But as a good UU, I'm hard-pressed to explain what ultimates I feel beholden to. I try to use our principles and purposes as a way to visualize the goalposts, the boundaries of my life, whereas Gertie's responsibility was so clear. She's even dutiful toward her mother-in-law, who can turn absolutely anything into a criticism. I hope you don't have one of those in your life in any form. I so admired this character, Gertie. She is resolute, dutiful, firm, steadfast, and loyal. And she whittles in every free moment. And I noticed that what she carves is either a jointed doll or a crucifix. I tried to imagine how these two symbols captured the essence of her life. Is she a victim? She tries to obey her mother-in-law and the Bible's commandment, wives, be subjective to your husbands. And with all those constraints she lives inside, she finds her only expression in carving. And throughout this book, she both identifies with and pities Judas, the one who was a betrayer. Quote, Gertie's preoccupation with Judas is revealed early on when she remarks that she would like to carve his likeness. Soon after, we're introduced to Gertie's block of wild cherry wood, which Gertie believes one day she'll bring out of the block his image. She's hoping that the he will be Christ, but she really believes he'll be Judas. Isn't that an interesting statement? When in literature and our lives do we identify most with Judas the traitor and offer sympathy to him? I think that's an interesting question to chew on. When we stop and deeply reflect, do we have a complicated empathy toward him? I believe, though it's perhaps only to make myself feel better, and that happens totally a lot, but I think we all have these very complicated moral lives and carry the burdens of the mistakes we've made and all those things we should have done that we failed to do. I think that's the burden of being a human being and having enough freedom to think. So if you carry disappointment about yourself and how you've lived and all that you've done and all that you failed to do, I want you to know you're not alone. I think it's a burden to be a person who pays attention and cares about others and mostly makes effort to do the right thing. So again, I try to understand novels by putting myself inside the story, and I try to imagine myself as each of the characters. I'm guessing we all kind of do that, and we hope to see something we haven't seen before. So, on page 139, this novel states that Gertie pities Judas. It's an interesting comment. The Judas that she pities. I think that sentence could maybe lead to a whole dissertation. It probably has. If the house in the mountains is her paradise, then certainly Detroit is Gertie's wilderness, if not Hades itself. Like the Israelites who fled slavery to die in the desert, she's asked to leave a simple, if physically hard life in her beautiful forest, and to enter a place that is chaotic and unpredictable. The war has changed everything. The young men are away. Everyone waits with agony for the special postman that may come. The need for steel workers draws people into the growl and mutter and roar of the cities. And Gertie reads and tries to live the Bible, including, wives, be in subjection unto your husband. We probably see that as a little too simplistic a command, but I bet you we each carry some version of what we think we should do. A complicated sense of being responsible. I find it hugely significant, and as I said before, that throughout the story, Gertie both identifies with and pities Judas. So in the way of excellent novels, The Dollmaker kept asking me to ask myself those questions. To what do I owe allegiance? To what am I truly committed? Am I dutiful? Do I do the work that is mine to do? Am I appropriately awake to the needs of those around me? Do I see myself in those who make serious mistakes? Do I act differently when I can empathize with someone who has made terrible mistakes? And by the way, I trust that our UU communities will keep prodding me into asking such questions. It's one of the two reasons I belong to this denomination, to be with friends, because I found in you my tribe, and to be called to be my better self. May I be provoked over and over and over and over again into asking myself, what do I believe in? And am I living those values? And what might I do better? And am I savoring the beauty that is around me at this very moment? We all have so much to be grateful for. Blessed be.
Please stand as you are willing and able and turn to hymn number 134. This is in honor of the Ukraine. Our world is one world. Sing loud. Be ready. 1, 2, ready, sing.
Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rain that falls. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes, with love or hate we make a bridge or wall. I think we should say.
All right, friends.
It's a lovely hymn. And I so appreciate everybody trying their best. There you go. So my request is this morning, as we leave this place and attend our meeting, for you to go in peace and be makers of peace. Blessed be. Amen.
At this time, turn to one another. We're going to sing our...
What about the chalice?
Oh, just 1 second. We will have one. Our chalice extinguished is this. The love and the work of friends and lovers belong to the tasks that are its health. Rest and rejoice, belong to the task and are its grace. Let tomorrow come tomorrow, not by will is the house carried through the night. Now please turn. We're good. We're going to sing Go Now in Peace. Remember, sing loud. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, sing.
Go now in peace. Go now in peace.